The night before we had to sign and we had the contracts ready, I called Helen and I said, it doesn't feel so good. It would destroy our mission.
So what was the other drive that is not money?
Purpose. My jaw dropped when I saw the results. I think sometimes some of the good moments that I've experienced, I haven't experienced them good enough. I don't want to have a hindsight in 10 years and say I was never there for my daughter.
Welcome to Fireside, where we sit down with successful founders every month in order to capture their stories, insights, and lessons learned along the way. Hit the follow button and subscribe to our newsletter for more, link in the description.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. So you are the managing partner of ūmmi, which is Europe's first hard kombucha brand.
Yes.
And before that, you were one of the initial co-founders of Copenhagen Coffee Lab,
Yes.
which you exited a few years ago.
Yeah, quite a few years ago.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that. Yeah. But it all really began when you were a kid and you used to make brunches, prepare brunches for your family.
Yeah, I really always liked gastronomy. I liked to take care of people, I think, essentially. And I like to create the things. And back then I was probably 10 or so. I liked building a table. And for me, it's like, I think it's a little the problem I have right now. Problem good and bad can also be an advantage that I don't know how to stop and when to stop. So I started getting some breads and getting the things out, cheese out, and started preparing the table. And then it just never stopped. It goes to, I've figured out how to make these little sugar rims on glasses for the orange juice, and it just went crazy. And yeah, I enjoyed
as a kid,
as
the
a
decoration
kid.
and everything.
Yes, because I liked making things and then having people come together.
Nice. So did you ever reflect on where that interest for food and gastronomy came from at a young age?
I think it came mostly from my father.
Okay.
Because my family split early on, but I was raised by both, and he had this huge, long custom-made table in his apartment where he always hosted dinner parties and stuff. And I watched him do that, and bringing people together. Even though you don't meet him and think he's a warm, loving guy straight away. Mm-hmm. He is, but he's still reserved. But he shows that through food. And I think that's where it came from.
It's a very loving way to show.
Yeah.
And so by the time you were a teenager, you already knew you were interested in food and gastronomy, but you also told me you did not identify as a business person. However, you did go to study business at the Copenhagen Business School.
Yes.
So I was curious to know what drove that decision.
Yeah, well, I originally that I had some interest for anthropology and not the business world, I have to say, but I found a course that was called Business, Language and Culture. Mm-hmm. And I grew up at the border to Denmark. I went to Danish school, hence that's where the Danish thing and the Copenhagen Coffee Lab and the Danish speaking comes from. I was raised right at the border, so Danish system. And this was a course that focused on Denmark and Germany, so pretty much Germany as an import country, and then business, language and culture, so understanding the cultural differences between the two, understanding a little bit on how the trade between those two nations work. And most people from that bachelor's degree then came into working for some Danish company that exports to Germany, or the other way around. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe, I can combine that a little bit, culture is interesting. I wanted to study anthropology, and I found some of the courses really interesting. We also had a lot of, I think that's where my love for the economists comes from. We had a lot of economist articles all the time, a lot of discussions in class. So when I heard about that course, I thought that could be interesting. And that's how I thought, okay, I can still make a living and create something. There was no entrepreneurship interest back then. I kind of slid into that after doing lots of other things. Like I was a ski teacher for a bit, but I had a gap year and I lived in New Zealand for a bit, so a little bit of travels. And then I thought, okay, let's move into that. I kind of, not a very massive conscious choice, but more the interests aligning, and then going with my gut, thinking kind of all of that together makes sense. Yeah.
And so you ended up studying for 3 years there.
Yes.
And so I was kind of expecting you to take a big job somewhere at a big corporation, but you ended up going to work for Greenpeace in New Zealand.
Yes. A little bit. I like when I speak about the bachelor's degree and how I thought this is a good combination of culture and I can learn a little bit from that. I hear this like, how it all explodes a little bit, because I got a little disillusioned with the business space when I studied at that school. It's a good school, and I went back for my master's degree. So I love how they operate. They give a lot of freedom. I also studied here, completely different. They give a lot of freedom, huge projects. So you have to learn how to work independently. You have to learn how to build your own storylines on what you want to work on, and then it counts for a lot. A little bit like the real world. It's not some teacher telling you now learn this by heart and then vomit it out in class like bulimia learning.
It's more useful and practical.
Yes, it's more like it's more independent. It's kind of for independent thinkers. So that I liked, but I tried to find connections there too, to figure out if anyone. Yeah, I didn't make a lot of close friends, and I don't have issues making friends generally. I just didn't connect very well. I didn't connect with the school. I connected with some teachers, but not many. So, and then I found this, it's a consulting group. It's non-profit consulting, but I thought the idea is genius. So it's called 180 Degrees Consulting. It's a non-profit. It's based out of the Copenhagen. I think that they're maybe Europe-wide. I haven't looked into this in a long time. But I thought this could be cool. I can connect there. I can volunteer, because what they do is they work with some of the biggest consultancies that are operating in Denmark. Like McKinsey is there. We had PA Consulting also that worked with us. And then you pretty much train a bunch of students as little consultants, and that work is given to nonprofits, because nonprofits can't afford consultancies. So I thought that's genius, because you help. It's a non-profit. A lot of students get a lot out of it, because you get free training from consultancies, from some of the world's top consultancies. And I had fun there, and I liked the founder and the idea that was there, but also within the group that I was in doing this, I felt that it was done for some of the wrong reasons. Getting trained to be good and to become a consultant makes sense, but it wasn't so much about the nonprofits. It was more like, we need this system in order to be able to get trained by consultancies, right? And we need to have a batch of this is right to do because we're helping nonprofits. I didn't see much care for the nonprofits. And I think that's part of it wasn't conscious. It wasn't like, now I'm going to go to Greenpeace. It's more like I was frustrated with that kind of ethos there. And then I wanted to do something completely different. So I volunteered for full time. And then I had to have a lot of jobs in order to be able to be full-time volunteer for Greenpeace in New Zealand. Yeah, one of the oldest Greenpeace offices. That was fun.
Wow. And so were you like an activist? Were you on like oil rigs and stuff, or what would you?
No. No, that's why I had to, because I remembered you sending me something where it sounded like I'm an activist. I'm like, oh God, no, I wasn't that daring to say. I did one activation where we did street theater at Greenpeace works very, very well with campaigns. Like, it's a huge marketing company. They do really well in how they structure these campaigns. So at the time we had a Save the Arctic campaign. And I remember it was the main street in Auckland in New Zealand, where we did a street theater, and we kind of just wanted everyone's attention. So it was just to get filmings out of it and stuff. And I participated in that as an actress. At the time we had, I forgot her name, but Xenia, the warrior, Xenia. She was working for Greenpeace as an activist, climbing oil rigs. And I was playing her role in this oil spill. So we had this big black tarp that went out, and then we had guys dressed as polar bears coming out, and I was Xenia, so I was wearing this really short skirt and was dressed like as a warrior lady, and I had to fend off the oil and save the polar bears. So this was like I don't know how you say that, but like a quick theater,
Mm-hmm.
We were like normal people in the street, and then suddenly people went, okay, 10 seconds, boom, and then this happened.
It's like a flash mob type of marketing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's the only activist thing I did.
I see.
Apart from that, I was a recruiter for outreach campaigners. So these, I would say, annoying people that knock on your door, because in New Zealand it was allowed door to door, so they can go door to door and ask you for money, but it's essential. It's a independent non-profit. They don't take money from corporations or governments. So in order to stay independent, they need people. So I had no problem recruiting them and being like shoulder on shoulder asking for money after.
Let's see. And so after that, you went back to school and ended up doing your master's thesis here in Lisbon.
Yes. In Copenhagen actually. But I did an exchange semester here.
In Lisbon.
And then I wrote my master's thesis. You're right. Never mind. Yes.
See,
the master's
I know your
degree.
story.
Oh my God. That's true. The master's degree was Copenhagen, but that's true. My thesis was about, team here.
And that's how you got introduced to Copenhagen Coffee Lab? Or
Yes.
So you didn't come here for that?
No.
But how did that happen? And
no, so I did one exchange semester here. That's how I also studied here for a little bit. And then I went back to Copenhagen, and during my time here, I connected with also this nonprofit group that wanted to turn a desolated prison, an old political prison during the regime, Salazar regime, in Trafaria into like a cultural center. And they've already done some activations, and I saw what they did, and I wrote about them because I thought that was really interesting on how you have not business, no money focus, but you still, because they still managed to do so much. And I was analyzing what drove that motivation if it's not money. And that's how I got really, because I had like 8 months to write the thesis. I got frustrated with just academic work. So I wanted to work a little bit, make some coffees, and that's how I met the girls.
Just before we get to Copenhagen, so what was the other drive that is not money that you found out?
Yeah, purpose, pretty much, yes. Because and community. So they still operate. I'm still on someone has my phone now. They see the updates that I get. It's called Prisoners, the group. But it's really interesting because they settled in that community there, and they wanted to do something for the local communities. And they found a lot of purpose in that. They could see they did a few activations, like they did a radio station there, for instance. They did some restaurants there and stuff, like pop-ups kind of.
Yeah, I see.
And they saw the effects of that, and then that gave them motivation. So it was like a currency that drove back into their motivation to create more. So it was really nice to see. Yeah.
Okay, so
Coffees.
Yes, let's talk about coffee.
Yes.
You were like very early in the specialty coffee scene.
Yes.
It was 2016, right?
Yes.
There was nothing like it in Lisbon, I suppose.
No.
Tell us about how you co-founded and those early challenges.
Yes. Well, maybe it's better to say partner, co-founder, because it was really early. After a couple of months, I joined them. But I came across them when they just started out. We still had a Piaggio back then, this little 3-wheeler. And I started working a little bit for them. I just said, okay, I can make a couple of coffees, just to keep my mind off things, because I did work in coffee in between and all the little jobs that I had. And really quickly, when I wanted to take a job here, actually, I got headhunted for Siemens, the German.
Siemens.
Yes. For the offices here, and I was about to figure out whether I want to take that job, and then one of the girls says, you have to, please don't do that. We pay you less, we give you more work, but please can you just stay and become part of this? And that was very
really
yeah,
that's fun.
very quick. But then again, it was like my gut that was like, I don't know. I also remembered I had a lot of interviews, first with the recruiting company, then with the Siemens team, 3 interviews there, and they showed me my desk, and I could just feel how my throat was shortening a little.
The corporate aspect of it, or?
Yeah, also just there was a vibe in that office. There was one lady that I really liked, a Swedish lady that tried to convince me then. That was really like worked there for a few years, but I also saw she just started a startup 4 years ago now. But there was something in the vibe that wasn't like open and honest and let's talk about things, but more like I'm here.
I mean, you're clearly not necessarily aligned with the corporate world from what we've understood so far. So
yeah, maybe
that kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah, maybe not that much, but I think I was also unlucky. I think that you can have like my co-founder, I have a few co-founders in my current business, ūmmi. And there, for instance, we have Jonathan Weaver, who's an amazing guy that joined us also like really early on when he still lived in the US, and he worked for Nike for, I don't know, 10 years or 12 years. And now he works for a bigger Swedish startup, but been in the market for some years. And I could see through him now, because I've been around him for the last 5 years, I can see that this is a different culture. He was in this little culture that was completely different from what I experienced. So it's not that I'm like, they're the devil.
So what are those initial issues you faced with Copenhagen?
Oh, well, we bootstrapped. So we had some partners in Copenhagen. So that's where we got machinery from. That's where we got our beans from, which is a little bit of a funky system that you have really expensive beans roasted in Denmark and you take it
You're importing them.
south.
So you're importing beans from Denmark directly and a coffee machine?
That was the investment from our partners. So they put machinery, and then, well, the girls, that was before I joined, had to work without a wage and sort of earn their ownership in it. And then from that on, well, I think the next challenges that came was just how you grow without any investment. And we didn't even think in those lines. We were the first ones starting. I remember how we had to, serving coffee was very much like this, like, try it. I know it's expensive and I know there's milk in it, but it's quite nice. So it was figuring out then, okay, if we only serve coffee, that doesn't really work. It's not enough. It doesn't give us enough income. So we had to start baking, and then we started baking in the wine store across the street. And I was figuring out, I was the baker. I'm not a baker, but I figured it out somehow to make cinnamon buns. Wow. And I remember also we hired a baker back then, Miyuki, a chef. She was a trained baker. And I remember me training her how to bake in that bakery, and she was very used to hierarchy, so she was very like just listening to me, telling her how to bake, which I don't quite know perfectly, definitely. And then after a while, she just slowly gave me suggestions. How about you do this? And then at some point after like 30 minutes, I'm like, you tell me how to do this and you take over. So it was more, okay, we'll bake across the street in the wine store. Then it started kicking in that there were more expats coming to Lisbon also. We had a line outside the Copenhagen Coffee Lab, the first one that we had there, near Prastadas Flores. So the street was always busy. And then we outgrew that wine store. So we had to find a commercial kitchen, but commercial kitchens are expensive. So we found this kitchen that normally works from like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So we had to bake at 4 a.m. and we made it work somehow. And we found some more bakers in the team that were okay working at 4 a.m. in the morning. So it was more, and then we grew really bootstrapped from that and like became profitable really quickly,
Okay, typical like scrappy beginnings of doing everything.
We're very
survival mode.
Yes, yeah. But fun. I mean, it depends on I think it depends on your co-founders a lot too. So without those two ladies, I don't know if we had survived. It's like giving each other energy, it's impossible. I don't know how people do businesses like this completely alone. I don't understand. Like my head would explode. Sometimes it's also just unloading. It's like with a partner, you need to be able, it's like a marriage a little bit. You need to be able to say, well, I'm really frustrated. Or I remember the girls, I did way too many of those 4 a.m. baking sessions, specifically in the end when we lost one of the bakers. And I remember Helle just taking my car key out of my hand, saying, "You're not driving anywhere. You can barely stand, And you need to have people that knows, because if she had argued with me, I had argued with her. But she knew me really well. She just acted, and it worked. And she sat me down, and it's really the dynamic that you have with your co-founders that they can make it.
And so you were baking across the street with at the wine store?
Yes.
So you had a deal with them, or just like...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They were struggling a little bit with their wine store. They were doing some evenings where they also served food. That's why they had the kitchen, and they were selling wines also. And they had an older guy there. I forgot his name. That was very knowledgeable in the wine scene. But then we paid them some of their bills and then some rent, and it helped. Yeah.
You mentioned that there was an issue with the milk and the coffee with the Portuguese market.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's what a bica. Do you know what a bica? Have you heard bica before? Bica is like a short.
La bica, yeah.
It's like it translated. It means bebe isso com açúcar.
Okay.
So first of all, the first challenge we had was the taste of the coffee. Our coffee doesn't taste burnt. Like, it was really well roasted. Sorry, it was really well roasted coffee. But the Portuguese, they loved it, and they had 3 blonde girls standing there in these low counters, serving coffee to them, telling them that this is really expensive. It costs 3 times what they pay for a bica. And you don't put sugar in there. We always had to say, try it without. And you can put sugar, but bebe isso com açúcar is because it's burnt. You can only drink it when you put sugar in it. So, and then milk was like, when coffee is bad, that was the thing we learned from the old wine guy across the street. It's like, the Portuguese put milk in there when the coffee is very bad. And we're like, oh gosh, we're like charging $3.30 for a cappuccino. That's how much, the meal costs down the street. So it was a challenge for sure.
Wow. So, but it started to work well? People were standing in line?
Yes. Yeah. Specifically because I think, timing always makes a difference. So there was a lot of expats. There were a lot of expats coming to Lisbon at the time. And we really tried to take care of the locals. Like, the girls and I had also Portuguese lessons. So we really tried to be... It sounded horrible in the start, but we tried to speak Portuguese. When Portuguese came in, we're like, oh, nice, and then try to integrate them. So we really tried to get the locals to come as well. Like, we had Hugo, he was a local, he was an author, and he had his own chair in our lab. Like, that's his chair, and he always had the same breakfast. And we took care of him because it was important for us to integrate with the community. And I think that also made it happen. And then the expats, of course, willing to pay $3.30 for a cappuccino. That was
the timing was super important in your journey.
Yeah.
What you ended up selling after a couple years?
Yes.
So why sell?
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
That's a long story, but let me see. So we our partners I actually haven't met the partners until very late. Like, the girls just made me part of the entity that was here in Portugal. And once the partners came with some large investors, and we're really excited. Look, we can scale this. We've got a completely different budgets. We can find it, because we were already looking for a second shop. Because we were growing bootstrap, but we were growing. We knew that we couldn't keep baking across the street at 4 a.m. We wanted to do something proper, and then we would have asked for a bank loan. So that was initially the plan. But then this happened, and our partner said, okay, let's see if we can scale with them. And initially, the Copenhagen Coffee Lab structure in Copenhagen too was very complicated. There was a lot of ownership there, a lot of different owners. So the investors obviously said, like I would as well, this is a little bit of a mess. We have to have that a little bit cleaner. So I think that there was sales happening for sure in Copenhagen and getting that cleaned up. And we were also supposed to then sell pretty much. That was the idea for them. So it's like, but then we met also, I think that the guys that are running it now are amazing guys. They're bakers, so they do know how to bake. Definitely, they built a huge bakery chain, so they know what they're doing. And initially we were supposed to exit, but then they met us, and there was a option on the table to work with them and keep the ownership, but the ownership of that that
Okay.
shop.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's always, it didn't feel right. The night before we had to sign and we had the contracts ready, I called Helen. I said, I don't know. It doesn't feel so good. Maybe because our little dynamic that we had was disrupted, and I could already feel that there were things not aligned for me inside out. I didn't feel comfortable. I wasn't motivated. And when you suddenly have a huge budget that you could work off and you could scale this suddenly, I should have been more motivated. So I thought maybe there's something there that doesn't sit right. And to be honest, I didn't think it through that much. I just thought, okay, let's see if they can make us an offer. So they bought us out.
Okay.
But it was after 2 years. So yeah.
Did you ever figure out what was that thing that you didn't feel?
I think that there was, again, there's a lot of knowledge for baking, but we were gastronomy first. So we had like, the counter was it's completely different how it looks now. We had a low counter, white, made by some carpentry students in Lisbon. And we were very active in it. The three of us always had shifts in the lab, right? And we had this little office in what we called the Lemon Garden across the street where we were working if we weren't there. And I was sleeping. There was this big bed in the middle of the garden because I worked really early. So it was a good match. But the gastronomy was sort of, I didn't sense it. I sensed that there was a lot of work in selling baked goods, but not so much in building the space for everyone to meet. The thing that originally I always liked about gastronomy since a child, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a different business, and that wasn't me.
Interesting. So the next logical question is going to be, they're now, Copenhagen is a huge chain. They're like in 30 plus cities in Europe, I think. And when you exited, it was your only first location, right? I'm just wondering.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And we only we had almost, well, we had a minority stake, so we couldn't call the shots anyway. So
I see.
it was of that business. So we knew that, well, whatever happens, we'll kind of have to follow the lead. And I think if baking and scaling baked goods would have been my thing, then it could have been fun, I don't know. But
so after seeing where they are today, have you ever reflected in hindsight on whether you maybe should have stayed or not? Are you satisfied with what you did?
Well, I knew where they wanted to go.
Okay.
They didn't. They managed. That was.
So you were sure they're gonna succeed?
Well, yes. I knew. Well, I had a sense for the kind of budget that lied behind it. So and it was always about scaling quickly, and there were more countries in play. So yeah.
Okay. So in
surprised.
hindsight, it was the right decision.
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know. I'm not very good with hindsight. Because I'm like, okay, well, maybe, if you think of that entire trajectory and I had done that, maybe I would have been fine doing that too. Maybe I would have, who knows what would have happened, So it's not like I really missed that chance. Well, life would be different. Things would be different. Chances would have been different at that time. So it would have been fun, and I decided not to. Sometimes I miss the big budgets. So probably fun to try with such a big budget and sort of velocity behind it. But no, no regrets. No.
Okay. Yeah. That's the best way to say it. That's the best way to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that, you're the managing partner of ūmmi.
Yes.
So Europe's first hard kombucha.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, good job on creating a new category.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's a challenge.
So how did that idea come along? And tell us about the beginning.
Okay, so this kind of came out of one of our regulars at the Copenhagen Coffee Lab.
Copenhagen.
Actually. Nice. Yes. Greg, he was one of the guys that was there a lot because he also came, I think, pretty much at the same time as us. I think he moved from France back then, but he's from the UK. And he, for a while in between, I couldn't work with coffee for 2 years. So part of the sale, I signed a non-compete, so I couldn't manage or deal with coffee in Portugal for 2 years. But then I worked with him after that stopped for a coffee shop he started, which was Kombucha.
Oh,
and he said,
the one here.
yes, yeah. And he thought, okay, maybe you can manage that a little bit and, assist. There was a floor manager because I was really pregnant at the time, like 6 months pregnant pretty much. But I said, okay, let's go, let's start. I don't care. Let's try it. If I don't have to be on my feet, it's okay. And then he sold also. He exited that business. I gave birth. And then he had this friend from the from the US that came over a lot. And he kept bringing hard kombucha, like tall hard kombucha cans from LA, from a company called Juneshine. And I like beer, obviously. I am German after all, so there's definitely that. But I also liked, I like dry French cider. If you want to drink something light that is fizzy, like a thirst quencher, you say that? And I couldn't find anything except for maybe beer, which sometimes can feel like a meal, or this dry cider. Galipette at the time was a version that I could find in Continente, but it changed recipe now, got sweeter as well. And when they introduced this to me, Chris then moved in with me for a little bit. I thought, wow, what a brilliant idea, because it's based on tea and not based on apples. So naturally it's dry, it's not sweet. And also the sugar content is really low because, again, you don't ferment apples, you ferment tea.
Yeah.
And I thought that the company also did a really good job, Juneshine. I know that Chris is close with some of them. We also had some calls with the founders to learn about their journey. And then I think it was Greg and Chris that says, why not do this here? And I was like, okay, yeah, I have a newborn, but okay, let's try make hard kombucha in Europe. Yeah. And then we got a few more co-founders together to get the startup cash, and then off we went.
So you raised capital?
Yes. Yeah. It's like the drinks space has to operate like that. It's different from what I've done in the past. It's definitely there's a lot of people in that chain that eat off your margin. So yeah, you need to make sure you find a good head start, kind of, from capital, to find a good contract manufacturer straight away that you can source enough so that you can feed the initial demand. Yes, the first one was from the founders, and then we did like a different version of a friends and family round. So I don't know if anyone ever looked up ūmmi, then probably you see a lot of other faces in there too. You see maybe Ben Howard and Mia Rose and Kepa Acedo. So Greg, my co-founder, he worked within talent management for a long time, and also John for Nike did some talent management in the past. So they had some really good connections to specifically the sports world. And then we thought, okay, we might as well, instead of doing the old influencer model, the model of paying people to say this is really good, we'll see if we can convince them, if they're really keen on launching this kind of category, maybe they want to invest a little bit, and then they become actual co-owners before we even launch. So that's what we did, and that was kind of, we would say, a friends and family round, but with these guys in it. And it was important for us because it's a category that doesn't exist, like a drink, putting something in your body that you've never tried before and that you've never seen before. You kind of need a little bit of social proof, or like it's okay, like you have Ben Howard telling you it's okay, you can drink this. So we thought, okay, why not? We'll use them as startup.
Okay, so okay, it's like a rolling investment model.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And how are you convincing? How are you marketing it? How are you growing? Like, I know you do have a specific technique that you're using, which I thought was very interesting.
For how we grow?
Yeah, like the trampoline.
Yes. Yeah, well, again, when we launched in 2022, I think that was our launch year, We already realized that it's not the easiest to sell a new category to restaurant owners that then also have to sell it to their clients. So like, well, most people come in and they want a beer, and then you have a beer on the menu, and that's that, and you can provide a good beer. But trying something that they haven't tried before, there's a lot of education on the behalf of the restaurant owners, and they have to get their staff to educate. So it was a lot of, challenging for sure. So a little bit similar to our friends and family round and getting the right people involved from the start. The idea was to get the right accounts. So we just realized that, okay, instead of trying to be everywhere, which we don't have the budget for, because, well, that's why you don't see many innovative drinks brands out there, because they get squished pretty fast. We don't have the money for that. So we have to be a little more strategic and figure out how can we build allies that really understand what we're trying to do. So we found specific restaurants, specific regions in Europe that we're operating in now too, that get it. I don't know how to explain, but that understand what we as a company are about and what the drink is all about. So it's not a quick fix of like, this is just, this is another good beer, or this is some sort of trend that goes in it. For us, it was a genuine, I like this, I drink this, I think that there's a gap in the market for this. And if they understood that, we partnered with them. And for that, we started in Lisbon, and now we're in, well, again, different regions, but we're in Chamonix, for instance. For us too, it's like easier to penetrate a market that where, you're in 5, 6, 7 of the most important places in that region, then suddenly it's enough proof that it works and people are giving it a try, rather than something that you see when you walk past a restaurant, you see, I don't know what that is. It needs to be, kind of sought after.
I see.
Yes. And for that, yes, Chamonix, and now we're just launching in Mykonos in Greece.
Nice.
Barcelona, Amsterdam, we launched this year. Then we have Ibiza. Ibiza was a while ago also. Again, easy. We found a good sales rep in the region that are selling to some of the better accounts. And that was important for us, because without that social proof and without huge marketing budgets to really be in everyone's face all the time, you just have to make sure that you're genuine and you find people that where the red thread goes through, genuinely wanting to see this in market, genuinely wanting to sell this, not just I'm selling this because they're giving me 2,000 euros to do that. It's like that was important. So that's out of necessity, but also worked out well for us. We see this year.
And so you really have to sit with every business owner or bar owner and explain to them and pitch them and
big time
convince them.
We do staff trainings.
Like a lot of heavy lifting.
Yes.
Because you're not just another beer.
No, exactly. Like we have to explain. Well, maybe I can do that with you.
But the way you explained it earlier was very nice, like the fermentation of tea and like that you don't feel bloated after. And,
exactly. Yeah. It's pretty much, well, it's green tea from the Azores, which is also the link that we have. And then we use sugar and yeasts. Well, first we have the base kombucha with the SCOBY. And then we have another fermentation where we use yeasts, also in green tea, and then we add juices. So it's a naturally fermented drink, really light in sugar. We were a little surprised. That's when you don't have huge budget to always do everything correctly. We were surprised last year at our sugar results, because we always do something in the brewery called a Brix measure, which works with light reflection to understand how much sugar is in it. In a drink, but we did have some off. Maybe it was the alcohol. The head brewer is also a food scientist. He didn't quite know why the sugar content there that was shown to us in residual sugars was higher. So when we sent it to a lab to get the nutritional profiles updated, the sugar content was a lot less, which is a nice surprise. Nice. So for instance, our ginger lemon has 0.2 grams per 100 milliliter, which like my jaw dropped when I saw the results, which is incredibly low. So nothing has more than 2 grams per 100. So yeah.
Nice. And so how big is the team now? How many are you selling per year?
So we're still a small team. So it's mostly the founders working in it. So me and Chris, the American guy, the managing partners behind. And then we have full-time that jumped in is Greg now too, because he's incredibly good at selling. He's like a very natural salesperson, because he's kind of a no no bullshit guy. So when he sells, it's genuine. I think that's the best sale that you can make. Then we have a lot of how do you say, contractual workers working with us. So we've got our finance girl that does everything, kind of a jack of all trades, from accounts receivables to even some sales, like reaching out to get some reorders, everything she can do from the desk, plus projections and stuff. So so we have her. Then we have a graphic design team that is also on call.
That's a good sized team.
And a full-time sales agent also.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that allows you to sell how many cans per minute? No.
Per minute, I wish. Well, yeah. Well, we last year, I don't know if it's the number of cans. I think we reached maybe 200,000 cans.
Okay.
I need to do the math on that. But yeah, we had in the first year we had 50% growth, then 100% growth. Then it was a little slower last year. Every time that we have a little bit less investment coming through, it's a little bit harder, because most of our investment, in fact, in the budgets go into inventory financing, because we have to have the product to sell first. And for that, also getting good prices in place, we need to order in bulk. So it's the challenging business model here is that you have to place the orders, then you have to make it, then you have to sell it to clients, restaurants and bars, or distributors now this year a lot more. And then subsequently, it takes 30 days for them all to pay you. But you invested really early on. So it's always a cash flow challenge for sure. But we found our way around that too. It's how you set the terms and how you can manage that. Doable.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, because both of your businesses were kind of new in a way.
Yes.
And you always had those early days challenges of convincing that this new category is worth trying, and it seems like it's one of those things you like, that motivate you maybe.
Yeah. I think it does, because I accept the challenge. But it's the strong belief that should exist. I think more. That it should exist. Like it should be there. I see the opportunity, the market opportunity for that. Also because I see that I myself have a need for that. And we do our own little testings also early on when we had all the hard Kombucha cans from the US. We asked around a lot. It's like our little market adoption tests to see if there was a market for that. And there was a lot of interest behind it.
Really?
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there was a few. They did some funky flavors. I did one with mint, and I remember a lot of people saying it tastes like toothpaste. So we did not have any mint in any of our flavors until then. But yeah, I like that. I like those messy beginnings when you have pretty much nothing, and then you have to figure out everything. How do you name that? How do you produce that? Like, it took us a long time to find a contract manufacturer, for instance, because in brewing terms, you have something called cross-contamination. So when you brew beers and you brew kombucha, specifically our big kombucha vats, it needs to breathe. So you've got a lot of bacteria floating around, and if that gets into the vats of the big vats for their beers, they won't be happy. So it needs to be a certain size, and most of us turned us down. And I remember that from Juneshine as well, one of the founders telling us that they didn't want to do their own brewery. They had to build their own brewery, so have a huge investment in place, because they couldn't find it. Everybody turned them down because of that cross-contamination. So that took us a while. And then, how do you sell it? It was me I had a backpack full of bottles at the time when we started, where I was like, let's see how to sell it. And then I feel like in those really messy, like flux beginnings, you benefit a lot from doing it yourself, because then I also know how to train a salesperson. If I haven't tried that before, then how do I do that? So it was, I think it's the flux and putting it together. It's like piecing it together, all of that that's really exciting for me to start that. Yeah.
Cool. Where do you see ūmmi ideally? What's the ideal future looking like? And where do you see your role in there?
Well, I do want it to exist. I do want it to scale. Like, it's important for us, and it's just a different beast than when you're starting a restaurant or a coffee shop. You know, it's like the drink space is very competitive. There's a lot of, again, there's a chain of people eating off what you produce, what you make. So you need to have some budget behind you in order to reach like a critical mass, or to make sure that it becomes a sustainable business. So finding a good partner would be good. Would be great to see that we can get it into more hands. That's always, for me, that's pretty much what excites me, is to make sure that thing that I initially created, or we initially created out of flux, that I get so much joy from. I have to say, I'm drinking it almost exclusively. And I see the excitement at times with events and stuff, and I just love that I created that. For instance, with the ginger lemon, when I saw the results, I was like, wow, we got thousands of people to drink something that has less than 1 gram of sugar per can. You know, that's like, a lot of companies don't manage to do that, and we didn't know that it had that little, but it's great. And that's what I want to be able to not get diluted, though. So it's a challenging plan for sure, because it's easier to sell something that has a lot of sugar, because, well, your brain reacts dopamine. So, but it would destroy our mission and what we want to do with it. So if we find the right partner and get it into more hands, that would be great.
Yeah, that's another aspect in your journey that I noticed, that you've always tried to reconcile building with values and profit.
Yes.
I don't know how easy that is, which I'm pretty sure it's not easy. But how have you managed to do that? Like, you probably never compromised on values, but which means you probably compromise on profit or on revenue at certain points. And is that the model you're fine with in general?
I think it can go hand in hand, like, of course, but if I have the choice to have a little less profit, and not compromise on what we're, like, our mission of what we want to achieve, then I'll go with that. And if it's not aligned anymore with that, and it's the profit, sort of the profit ethos takes over, then it's probably not for me. I understand. Again, it's a different beast, because when you're dependent on funding, of course, you need to also make sure that you're, like, you know, with metrics. You asked me for metrics again, and how many cans have you sold? Again, like, have my finance girl next to me, and she tells you all of that. But for me, it's not. It's more in making sure that we constantly have growth, that we constantly make the small steps within the mission that we have to get it into more hands. And if we don't have funding backed, if we don't have backed funding, then we don't get there either. So we also need to meet those metrics. We need to make sure that we have growth, that we don't stagnate, right? So for that, you need to, sometimes you need to make some hard choices. In, like, maybe it's, well, I can give some examples for product, because I'm very product focused. I always have been, with concentrates versus real juices, or pasteurization. We're a pasteurized product. That's also a good one. So we wanted to keep it raw, to have good gut bacteria in it and whatnot. So we thought, okay, we'll cold chain deliveries, expensive, making sure that you don't have spoiled product, that you don't have someone in Athens drinking a can that tastes like vinegar. Challenge, but okay, if it's really what we want to do, then figure out how we can do that. But then we did do some tests with some hard kombucha brands from the US, and tested their claims. So whether they really are good for you, whether they really have live probiotics in them. And the majority of them didn't have that. So it was easier for us then to say, okay, we're not going to do that. And we're just going to pasteurize. And also we need to do that, because otherwise this business won't work. Concentrates is another thing. I did get slammed a bit from some product, because we're in very good accounts, and some sommeliers would look at concentrate use and they say, oh my God, you can't use concentrates. But we're launching a new flavor this summer, and it has lime and grapefruit juices, and we're getting these massive juice drums delivered, and it's a challenge on just operating with that. So we started small. It's like we have to make some concessions. I would love to work only with juices, but it's just not possible at the moment. So, and concentrates is still 100% that fruit. So I had to cut some corner there. I have to say.
These are hard choices.
There are some hard choices, but at the end of the day, is our promise as the brand and what we're bringing to market still a clean, healthier version of an alcohol with low sugar, naturally fermented, without weird stuff in it? Then yeah, we still have that, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, what would you say? Like, you've had a very squiggly career path, as you named it.
Yeah.
How, like, I'm interested in your hindsight about that. Like, would you have changed anything in the choices you made, and how you went from like the business studies to Greenpeace to Copenhagen Coffee Labs,
Yes.
to and ūmmi now?
Hindsight.
Yeah, I know you love
My
it.
favorite. Yeah. Well, I have a 5-year-old daughter, so maybe sometimes when I think about like what she sees me working a lot, so I get a bad consciousness with that sometimes. It's like a 60, 70 hour week, so starting at 5 a.m. and then picking her up in the afternoon. So sometimes I'm wondering when she sees me working and she goes and she has this thing of, no, don't go back to work. Well, I'm like, okay, what should I tell her? We can use that as a hindsight. What I would suggest to her to do in the future. And I think, well, I need to sometimes, like with the table where I go crazy when I was a child, and I'm like in it, like stuck in it, like tunnel vision. I should have looked up a little bit more in the past. So I think sometimes some of the good moments that I've experienced, I haven't experienced them good enough, like not consciously enough, because I had the tunnel vision of, I think that's why co-founders are very happy to have me, because I'm like, okay, this needs to be fixed, so I go all in. But it also means that sometimes I forget stuff around me, like I forget friends sometimes. Yeah, my daughter, like I get a tunnel vision of, I need to fix this now, and she's trying to get my attention. That's where I don't want to have a hindsight in 10 years and say I was never there for my daughter. So I would tell her, look up and be conscious about the things the journey that you take, whatever thing you do, whatever career choice I have, just be conscious and live in the moment at times, a little more than I did.
Yeah, very interesting. So are you trying to fix that on a daily basis?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like, that's where, like, yeah, when I think about the doubts of whether I did, because you asked also with the lab, and I look back at that, my biggest like pain is that the 2 girls that I started this with, I'm very close with them, but they left. Like, I really miss them dearly. That was the worst thing that happened with the lab, is that they left. But it's important for me to sort of, yeah, take breaks once in a while, a little bit more, and my father is here, my mother also, they come for parts of the year where they stay in a house next door. And I do that now. Like, I am very rigorous though in separating my days. That's why I start at 5:30 in the morning, so that I have hours until 8 when I wake up my daughter, where I'm completely focused and I have no one distracting me. And that's what I do then, and I have a lot of work done, and I can wake her up without feeling like, fuck, what does the email say? And did I do this? And do I still have to do this? Well, I've done it already. So I can be in the moment with her, because I've crossed something off my list there already. But I still struggle with it, because, yeah, my phone's blowing up a lot, and when I want something again, it's like I get into that tunnel vision very quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I need
see.
to be very conscious about that, for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So as a founder, builder, someone who's always kept values in mind, someone who's very driven, someone who likes the early messy beginnings, all of these things. Uh, if you were to inspire one thing in people, what would that be?
Oh, I came up a few times maybe, but it's and it's not on purpose, but it's also our tagline. But it's trust your gut. Like, in the end, it's like all the decisions that I've made throughout my past was always based on gut. It's also something that Greg and I really have in common, is that we go, okay, this feels right. And if I was raised with a lot of freedom to choose anything, pretty much, I had no rules. We had no, like, you have to be home by this. Never. So we also went rogue a little bit, but it kind of teaches you a little bit, maybe the Protestant way. We're not religious, but like, you deal with your consequences. You live with your consequences. So if you're aligned inside out, then you can truly trust your gut. You can see whether that feels right or not. And then you don't have that hindsight as much. You don't have a, wow, I should have really done that, because then, now I have a young daughter and I need to figure out how to feed her. It's like if I'd worked for the lab, maybe I had a proper income, and I don't have to be creative. But I trust my gut, and
Yeah.
I continue to do that. So it's inside and outside aligned. And then you can also have those nice moments and look up from your television and enjoy.
I think you touched on a super important point here, which is you were brought up with the idea of freedom to do anything you want. And I think there's one thing missing in today's culture when they speak about freedom to do anything you want, is that, yes, you can do anything you want, but there's no footnote that says, but you have to live with the consequences.
Yeah.
Because actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And so I wish that was the message that we saw more often, rather than just, you're free to do whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's so irresponsible.
Yeah.
Would you like to add anything before we open the floor to questions?
No, nothing in particular. I'm curious to hear what people think.
You'll get a few of those.
Yeah.
All right, Laura, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. I came across ūmmi a year ago. It's a fantastic product.
Nice.
Love it. I'm just curious about the design, which I also really like. But looking at it now, you're introducing a new category, and like I see ginger beer there. It's not that well known a category, but it's out there. Whereas ūmmi, you don't know from when you look at it what you're selling. And then hard kombucha is not a commonly known concept.
Not at all, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, in terms of the product positioning, what was the thinking around that? And you have any thoughts on that?
So we did our friends and family round that I mentioned in the start. We expanded that also into some people from different industries that we just know from Lisbon, that are operating in Lisbon. And our can design, for instance, was inspired by one of the co-owners in the business that invested really early on, Julian Hönig. He was high up in the Apple hierarchy. And we just, it's kind of how we operated in the start. It's like, okay, what could this can look like? We wanted to have it in cans always, even though that was also tough to find a canning line and stuff. But for that, he looked at it and he thought, okay, well, first of all, there's a lot of noise out there at the moment in the consumer goods space. So you have a lot of colors and a lot of, if you want to be able to strike curiosity. So we had it like traditional can, right? In the front, ūmmi kombucha, and in the back this, blah. And he just said, well, flip it and make it just the U on one side. And then see if you can also stock it like that in some places. So consumers, all that they see, like we were in the Boom Festival the last 2 years that it was operating. And they had big fridges with just U's, like the whole thing was just covered in that U and that like iconic logo. And that was important for us, is to strike curiosity, because we cannot compete with those guys. Like, we have to then be completely different and say, okay, well, we'll just be a raw can. And how can we make that, still make do all the legal stuff that we have to put on there, and still be like enticing, like something where you walk past and then you go, hey, wait a minute, what is that? So that was the idea. And that's also why we didn't want to cut corners with the printed can, like to make it, we don't have labels. We didn't have that since the start, like really small print ones always. Yeah, that was the idea. And it was spiked by one guy that just is really creative really quickly. We just had a meeting with him and he says, why not do this? And then it felt right. And then we did that, yeah.
So many of us come from tech backgrounds, and you know, to me, if someone said, well, how do I start an e-commerce business? I would say, well, here are like the steps to go through. But I think about the food category. And so let's say you're at home and you've baked something in the oven. You're like, whoa, I could sell this, or you make a new beverage. What are the next steps to even get it like commercialized? Like, what would you need to do next?
Depends probably a little bit in what country you're operating in, because, well, even though we're in the European Union, we had to learn the hard way that there's different legislations to where you're at. If you want a commercial product and you want to get it out there, then you need to find, well, a contract manufacturer. You can also find a commercial kitchen that you can operate in, I guess. With baked goods, I really don't know how to organize, but if it's packaged goods, then there are obviously a few steps that you need to take. You need to make sure that you adhere to European labeling laws as well. Depending on what you, for instance, with ūmmi, it was important for us to make sure that we're organic certified. That was always definitely something we wanted to do. And there's a lot of rules based on that and how you label it. There's a lot of, you need to have, you have to have the information as to who produces it for you, who you are also, like your company information on that. And you need to have the right recycling symbols. Also very complicated as to where you're at. Right now, I think, I don't know, the newest cans that you will see on the market will have Greek language on there and like lots of different recycling symbols, plus a big deposit logo for Amsterdam. So there's different laws depending on where you're at. And then making sure, yeah, if you find a commercial space, then you should have the sort of the hygiene rules. They should have the certifications for that. Here in Portugal too, you have to have a like hygiene regimen in place and a company to check that. And yeah, right, labeling laws and quite a bit of money to launch it. To make sure you find the right packaging and you have some leeway to get it, to buy all your inventory, to get it started. Yeah.
And did you work with a consultant, or did you just like jump in and you're like, I'm just going to figure this out?
Oh, that's
You told me
yeah.
about that earlier.
That's a sore subject. No, we did work with some consultants, because I also I didn't want to fall into that. I felt a little imposter syndrome when I started. It was like, wow, who am I? I've never done a drink space. So we did work with some consultants. And also because I had a really young daughter at the time. So the consultant actually started, the first one we worked with, did a lot of good things in just kind of managing day-to-day some things. He was from Diageo, so big drinks. And then we worked with one for the UK as well, because we did some exploration into the UK. It's a tough one, because you can barely, like, you don't pay yourself anything when you start, and then you pay a consultant a lot of money to give you advice about things that they learn from you in the process to use later on. That's kind of my hindsight on that one, because yes, there are some things, of course, there's value in what can be told, and I might have had a very bad experience, but I feel like every business, and specifically, maybe if you start a craft beer brand, okay, you've got a lot of denominators that are the same if you start that, but starting a hard kombucha brand in Europe that doesn't exist, it's like, well, you kind of need to reinvent the wheel a little bit, and you don't have a consultant that is trained on exactly that. So unless there are, and there I can say, I think that good consultants there can be from any industry, but have to have done something in that phase that you're in. So if the flux in the start, right? If you have someone that has done something in that, started something from scratch and helping you do that, okay. But this, for instance, I liked the first guy we worked with. He was great, but he was operating in a huge business. So it's a completely different problems he's dealing with. So yeah, I felt a little bit like, oh, I'm giving you this money, but we really need it for other stuff, to be honest. So yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. It was really, really fascinating to hear. You mentioned along the way how important co-founders were for your journey. And it sounded like it was somewhat organic with Chris and Greg, maybe. But I was just curious whether there was some intentionality, like, did you have to reach out and search for more co-founders at different stages, or was that the team, or how did that evolve?
It's actually where some advice can come from, probably, because it was more of an organic mix that kind of came together. I think one of the connectors was probably Greg, because he knew some of the people. He put them together because he also. I remember Chris telling me the story afterwards, where it was just, I am very much operations, so, and he's very much strategy, right? He's very much looking up and thinking, okay, big picture, what can we do? And then he's telling Chris, well, we need someone to just get it done, and then maybe Laura can do that. So you need to kind of make sure that you have the different aspects covered. And one thing I would tell anyone that starts something now is to get a good, like, we were lucky with the finance people that we have connected to the business. But to have someone in finance from the start is very good, to make sure. It's like, and I work with Philippa like that. She's like my numbers brain. So I just have to, it's like a calculator. So give me this and this and this. And then within, we'll have some meetings, and then within a second I get that. We didn't have that initially in the start. So we did work with finance people, but it's good to have that as your co-founder, for sure. But for us, it was organic, and it's good. But it's also you need to have a good team dynamic. You need to be able to talk well with each other. You can have a finance person that's the best finance ace, but you just clonk heads. That doesn't work. So different personalities also coming together. If someone was as intense as me at times, I think that wouldn't work. But Chris and I were managing this for a long time in the start. He's a lot softer. I don't know. He's a lot more forgiving. He's like a cushion at times. When I just had to lay some stuff up, he was like, I get it. Bring it on. So that dynamic is important, and that's hard to figure out early on, right? If you want to recruit then test it, work together on something for a little bit, and get to one or two big problems. And if you can solve these, then you might be a good fit.
Hi. We were just actually commenting and said with immense respect, I can't work out why anyone would start a business now in F&B, food and beverage in general. Like, it seems really hard, and there's a lot of things against you, and supply chains and world crises and whatever. Yeah. So I'm just curious for you personally, like, what is it that you love about it? Why do you stay in sort of food and beverage? And if you see any patterns amongst other founders in the same industry as to kind of what unites you and keeps you in, I guess, such a challenging place to be.
Yeah. We within the brewery that we're producing, they're producing other brands. So it's a beer brewer, and they have their own beer, but they manufacture lots of. They're very creative because they realize they need to use their premises to be able to make it. And there is another team that produces there that I'm close with. That's a drinks brand, but soda. It's called Why Not Soda. And it's two German couple also, and we have war stories at times. And I think what kind of puts us on some of the same page is that, the initial drive to wanting to see this in market, right? For them, it was the story of they have two kids, so they wanted to make a soda that is not Coca-Cola, like something that is a little bit better for you, when they can still give their kids a treat without feeling bad for it. And that kind of mission kept them going, I think. And that's the same for me, is that the idea was I celebrate it when I see cans in hand, when I walk past restaurants and I see, wow, someone's drinking it. I think it's very cool. So it's a tough business, but I also appreciate that we have some diversity in the F&B consumer goods space. And I understand that it's like the odds are very much set against us, for sure. But if we don't try, then, you know, it's just going to be all the same. And that's also why we stay, for now, I can't promise something for a long time, but we stay away from big from big supermarkets. Like, we want to be in the organic stores where people, and I love that, I can spend hours at an organic. If it's a good organic store, I love like testing and figuring out, reading the labels and figuring out who's behind it and what is it, how much sugar is in it, what kind of ingredients do they use, what kind of packaging, how do they communicate that. I think it's really lovely to have that. We buy so many goods, we put that into our body every day. And if it's all the same, then, it's, first of all, it's boring because, well, we want some diversity there. And also, I don't know if it's healthy for us as a society to have, well, big food conglomerates just pushing the same stuff.
Can really see how that reflects in the markets that you've succeeded in terms of the kind of audiences that you have in some of the smaller towns, and like where you've been starting in France and then in Ibiza and things like that. It makes sense.
Yeah, thanks.
Doing business in Lisbon, in Portugal, is not easy. And then, as the lady said, this sector is not easy. It's not new anymore. There's many competitors. What is for you the hardest part, specifically doing business in Portugal? Because you could have started anywhere where probably easier to raise capital, laws, more money.
Yeah.
You
Why
don't
Portugal?
choose the easy path. What's the hardest part of doing business here? Yeah.
Of a business here in Portugal specifically? Well, you touch upon a few things there. Like I mentioned a few times, it is a capital intensive industry. In order, if you want to make it, you need to make sure that you have some backing, for sure. But we liked the origin story also. So the tea that we're working with, the green tea from the Azores, Goriana, we kind of came across that by chance. So we thought it makes a lot of sense for us to work with the oldest tea plantation in Europe, which is on the Azores, and it's run by two women. It's been in the family for generations. So that origin story was always important for us. And we were based here, to be honest, and we did have an infrastructure here for us. Like, we're working with really good teams across the board. So our legal team and our finance team, and we also had, in the gastronomy scene in Lisbon, we had to start somewhere. People still knew me a bit from the lab. I still get, I still see a lot of people on the streets that recognize that, kind of put me in that, oh yeah, the lab girl. So that one we wanted to use. So I think it would have been, it maybe equals out a little bit. If we had done it elsewhere, we would have had maybe a better, not a better infrastructure, but easier way to raise money, a massive, like a bigger target audience. Like, imagine London, starting it there instead of here, where we just focus on Lisbon and some of those regions. But the infrastructure was here, we were here, and the origin story was important to us.
Laura, thanks again for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Well fun.